In Mogadishu, number one was being shell shocked because a day after I was here, April 2nd, I think that night, a big blast happened. It was two blasts. And I heard it from home. And this is like almost 3, 4 miles away. It was crazy. I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. Like, and it was some guys that was really crying in the airport because they didn't know where to start from.
Fear, uncertainty, anxiety. That was Anwar Mohammed, deported to Somalia in 2018. He remembers the shock he felt being back in a restive country. Since Donald Trump returned to office on 20th January, immigration raids have been even more intense. Over 1 million non-US citizens are facing the possibility of being sent home. But for many, the US is home. It's where they've built lives, found stability and raised their families. So with all this fear and confusion of what's to come, we ask, how are African immigrants in the US coping with President Trump's renewed push for mass deportations? I'm Alan Kasuja, and this is Africa Daily. Deportation is a word that carries so much weight, and especially for people living with that reality. It means losing everything. Mr. Trump's focus is on mass deportations, with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Officers, or ICE, making over 2,000 arrests at the end of January alone. Deportation flights are already happening, and a lot of people are terrified. Reports say more than 4,000 undocumented Somalis could be sent back, the highest deportation numbers from Africa. But legal experts say these mass removals won't be easy. The system is already overwhelmed. I spoke to Mukhtar and Anwar, both deported from the US to Somalia in 2018 during Trump's first term. I'll let them take it from here.
Hi, my name is Mukhtar Abdulhab Ahmed. I've been here in Somalia since 2018. I got deported on Trump's first term.
Where were you deported?
I was actually got into a hit and run when I was 16. They said I had to wait 5 years when I tried to get my citizenship. Before I waited, I got my first felony when I was 19. I went to prison for a robbery. Then ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, picked me up. I did 7 more months in the immigration jail.
Right. So when you got deported in 2018, what is the story there? What happened that day you were deported?
There was 2 deportations that happened with me. Well, we went to Senegal. We was the guys that was there for 48 hours in handcuffs. There was 2 groups, guys that wanted to go back to Somalia and guys that wanted to open their case. Because right now, even the second time they deported us, they took us to Kenya. And then they got a contract plane that took us to Somalia. The ICE officers stayed in Kenya and didn't step on Somali soil. But I spoke to my mom that was getting elderly, and she was like, just come back home, man.
Right. So if you commit a felony in most countries and serve time, and you don't have papers, you're not a citizen, a lot of countries will deport you, right?
Yeah. But my situation is kind of different because my dad, he got his citizenship when I was 16. So I automatically should have got it. And my pops, he turned me over to the state. So I went to an actual group home before I turned 18.
Very interesting, and thank you for sharing your story with us. If I may pivot to you, Anwar, your story is completely different, right? Tell me about yourself and where you are now and how old you are.
Okay, my name is Anwar Mohammed. Anwar Qarani Mohammed. I'm originally from Somalia, but I used to stay in Kansas City, Missouri, in USA. So I went to the US in 1999. Anyway, so I turned 18 and I caught a robbery case on this. And as soon as I went to jail, that's when immigration came.
Were you a citizen?
I had my I-94 and stuff like that, my documents, So it was actually another friend of mine. He's a Sudanese guy, and we're in the same situation too. We caught the same case. We were locked up together, and his father came to court and proved that hey, I'm a citizen. My son should be a citizen. So immediately when they seen that, they released him. Not even 1 hour. They're like, sorry, we made a mistake, and they released him. So that's what they were really on me about too. They're like, hey, if your father does that too, you'd be released. But I never got a hold of my father over there. So anyway, I fought my case for myself. Actually, I won my first case. ICE like, hey, we're not gonna release this guy. We want to appeal this case and take it to the next court. So all the way it went to like whatever Virginia, and I lost my case. So I just finally gave up. I said, one day I'm gonna find my father and prove that I was a citizen.
So you were deported on April 1st, 2018. Tell me about what happened that day. How did it happen?
They tried everything, tried to get a hold of Somali embassy, which is in Washington, I believe, one of them. They finally got hold of them. They made some travel documents for us. At the time, while I was in immigration, I even filed some papers to the judge and told him like, hey, a big blast happened in Somalia. I was like, hey, you guys are sending me back to a place like that, you know, like what's going on? So he's like, hey, we cannot do anything. Al Shabaab does not really want you personally. They're fighting the government. So they're like, we don't know. We cannot do anything. You just committed a crime and you're going back to your country. This is how everything went. This is how weird it was. And we left the States and ended up in Kenya.
How long were you in Kenya for?
We were only there for almost an hour to switch planes. So I'm like, okay, Kenya is not my soil. You're supposed to deport me straight to my country. Anything happen in my country is on me then. But anything happened to me in Kenyan soil, how come you guys cannot go to Somalia and drop us off over there? So they're like, Somalia is dangerous. We cannot go there.
So they leave you in Kenya?
Yeah.
Right. When you landed in Mogadishu, how did that feel?
Shell shock, shell shock.
Landing in Mogadishu, yeah, that's right. That was number one, was being shell shocked, because a day after I was here, it was two blasts, and I heard it from home. And this is like almost 3-4 miles away. It was crazy. I was like, oh my god, this is really happening. Like, and it was some guys that was really crying in the airport because they didn't know where to start from. So it was some guys, like I said, that was with me that got robbed immediately that same night because they didn't know where to go. Yeah, it was chaotic at the time.
People still look at like people that's getting deported from America like people still got money or they made it, they got something, they came back with something, but that's not the case for all of us.
So how much money did you land in Somalia with, Mukhtar?
Me personally, I'll tell you the truth. I landed with $4. I bought one pack of cigarettes with $1 and gave $3 to my brother that came from Kismayo and picked me up from Mogadishu.
And do you have a job at the moment?
At the moment, no. I stay with my younger brother and his wife. I got two older brothers in the States. They send money here and there if they're doing good. If they're not, I need a job, but at the moment, I'm okay without one.
And Anwar, what is it like for you at the moment?
Sometimes I just drive I don't know if you heard of this little tuk-tuk thing, little Bajaj, whatever, that three-wheeler thing.
Like a three-wheel bike taxi, right?
Yeah. Basically, it's just a daily living.
And and I'm going to start with you, Mukhtar. When you reflect on your life and the decisions you made that got you into the problems that ended up with you having to be deported, do you regret some of the things that you did?
Yeah, man. First of all, I should have stayed in school. A good thing I got my high school diploma. I went to college, never completed. Should have stayed in school then too.
And what about you, Anwar?
It's certain things I do regret, and certain things I don't regret because I've learned a lot. But the only thing I do regret is just hanging out probably with the wrong crowd and just get into a bit of a criminal stage of mind.
Oh, well, one regret too was I should have filed my case a lot harder because I had a lot of action. So I'm looking for a lawyer. I need to find a good lawyer.
Where is home for you? Is it in Somalia or in the U.S.?
Tell you the truth, I would say home is back in the States because I've been there since I was in elementary school. I went there when I was 8 years old.
Yeah, and what about you, Anwar? Where is home?
Kansas City, Missouri, which I went to school, grew up. I have a daughter that's over there, and I haven't even spoke. I haven't mentioned, I guess, yet. But yeah, that is my home, in my heart.
And did you see your daughter? Do you have a relationship with your daughter's mother?
I had contact with her just through Facebook, which I've lost contact with now. Yeah, I just hope somebody hears this. Her name is Aliyah Muhammad. Yes.
And Anwar, if you could say one thing to someone facing deportation at the moment, what would it be?
The first thing is be prepared because you cannot really fight the government. Fight your case very well. Get you a good lawyer. Like I said, I had friends that came with me that were in the same plane with me that got killed, like in a blast for no reason. They didn't have anything to do with it. They just wanted to go to downtown and enjoy a little view and drink coffee, and they died right there. Just yeah, it's great. I just wish them the best. That's about it.
To the BBC Africa Daily podcast with me, Alan Kasuja. We've just heard from Anwar and Mukhtar about their experiences of deportation. And for many undocumented African immigrants still in the US, the fear is very real. Next, I spoke to Ikuya Abwaje, also known as AK Poku, an immigration lawyer based in Virginia, USA. She moved from Ghana in 2016 and now helps immigrants navigate the legal system and fight deportation. I asked her if she's feeling the impact.
I am feeling it a lot in my work. Even for me as an immigration lawyer, I was greatly stressed, during the first 2 weeks where Trump was releasing back-to-back executive orders. It affected me and my colleagues. I'm a U.S. attorney, I'm a U.S. citizen, but even I, really felt the weight of everything that was happening. It was just very destabilizing for many of us.
So who's worried the most, do you think? Or just undocumented people?
All undocumented people are at risk, but Trump and his administration, or Tom Homan, the border czar, mentioned that they are going to prioritize certain people, undocumented people who have dangerous criminal records or who pose a threat to national security. Those are the number one on their list. They want to also target people with removal orders. These are people who have gone through the immigration court system and they've been ordered removed by an immigration judge, but still didn't leave. The third group of people is just regular undocumented people who may not have any criminal records, and then people who are also here undocumented using other people's documents to work. The stats say that there are about 11 to 12 million undocumented people in the US, and out of those numbers, there are also about 1.3 to about 1.4 million people who have final orders of removal who haven't left. But again, despite this list that we have, Trump has stated he's not happy with the numbers. And so the ICE officers have been given quotas. There's a department in ICE called the ERO, Enforcement Removal Operations. They are responsible for going out into the communities and apprehending the undocumented people. And they've been given quotas. They have to arrest 75 per day across the 25 field offices.
Wow.
It's likely, and we are seeing that people who are not a target are also being apprehended just to meet numbers.
Like who?
We see it happening. There's a lot of collateral arrests. So if ICE conducts a workplace raid, they seal all exits, military-style tactics, and then ask everybody to produce their documents to show that they have status. And so if you are undocumented, despite the fact that you may not have a criminal record, you could be swept up in the ICE raid and detained.
That's interesting. Very interesting. I was talking to a couple of guys from Somalia, Anwar and Mukhtar. They were deported. They'd spent some time in jail. They'd committed felonies and they went back to Somalia. But they feel like their process was flawed. Or they hope that someone can look into their matter. I'm sure you've had very many such stories. But I wonder if there are any legal options for people like that. Is there anything that provides them any sort of cover whatsoever?
Yes, there are legal options that allow people who have been deported from the United States to be able to come back into the US. But it's reviewed on a case-by-case basis. And let me just add that US immigration law is extremely complex. It's the second most complex area of law, second only to tax law. Some people will have statutory bars, 3-year bars, 10-year bars, 20-year bars, or even permanent bars. And so depending on what their records are, there are options that could allow them to come back in if they're eligible. And the thing about immigration is that it takes several years. There's just so much backlog. Currently, immigration courts have over 3.7 million cases pending. We just have 71 immigration courts throughout the United States.
What?
Take as many as 10 years.
That's not even 10 years, that's 100 years. Have you had cases of Africans scared to go to public places, some even not going to work or school because of these operations that are being conducted?
Oh, yes. There's just so many people that are very, very afraid. People are afraid to go to work. People are aware that they have a lot of security within their homes, and so they're afraid. Even when they hear knocks, blood pressures are going up, stress levels are skyrocketing. People are even afraid to order DoorDash, Uber Eats, because people just think ICE is everywhere. DoorDash can appear. ICE can come with DoorDash and then apprehend you.
But is ICE everywhere, though? Is ICE that ubiquitous, or is it also overstretched?
So yes, ICE is not everywhere. I mean, that's one of the tactics that the Trump administration is using to disorient, to destabilize. There's a lot of show on TV where they're arresting people and putting out the numbers to put fear into people. But in reality, the officers are limited. And in fact, Trump has even asked that several other federal agencies be deployed to help ramp up the numbers. And now we have to also remember that Trump's administration rescinded the ban on sensitive places. So previously, ICE could not carry out immigration enforcement actions in churches, in schools, in courthouses, in sensitive locations. Now that ban has been rescinded. ICE is going into elementary schools, speaking with children.
Speaking to children? Is that even allowed?
I mean, it sounds really morally wrong, and some of these children have been reported to be traumatized, throwing up sick to their stomach, afraid, because in reality, when we have cases with immigrants, a lot of them don't discuss immigration issues with their children because immigration is it's just complex and children are just unable to conceptualize it. So you'll have parents who say, my child doesn't really know, doesn't understand what's going on. And so to have these children being subjected to this when they have no idea that their parents are undocumented or they don't even understand what it means. But ICE is using that as a coy to get these parents to arrest them. And again, they're allowing ICE to apprehend people in courts. So it's just going to lead to people not showing up to court. That's going to lead to communities that are not very safe.
I had a story about someone who was about to be deported from the U.S. I don't know who this person is, so if you are listening and you're from ICE or the U.S. government, don't come asking me for answers. I have no idea who these people are, okay? For avoidance of doubt. Anyway, I heard that they moved to Canada. Is this something that you're seeing a lot of? Again, I have no clue who these people are. I've never seen them. I've never seen them before. So,
I like this disclaimer. So yes, we're seeing a lot of people who out of fear are self-deporting. And the interesting thing is that not all of these undocumented people are criminals or gang members. And just because you have a work permit doesn't mean that you're safe from deportation.
So let me ask you this. And I want you to give practical advice right now to hopeless people who have no idea what to do. Is there anything they can do?
All you can do at this minute is to empower yourself with knowledge. And once you are empowered with knowledge, you can navigate an ICE encounter. You have the right, against unreasonable searches and seizures, Fourth Amendment. You have the right to remain silent, don't sign anything, Sixth Amendment rights. You have the right to counsel.
Do these rights extend to people who've come in illegally? They're not American.
Yes, it doesn't matter. Those rights are applicable to everybody regardless of their status as immigrants. It's very difficult to give blanket legal advice to everybody.
It's such a bad situation for a lot of families, and a lot of them are hopeless, I can imagine. And I just imagine if you're a nurse working your hours as you should, having lived in the US for a long time, keeping your head down, nobody's going to bother you.
Not necessarily. The fact that you're keeping your head down and working and somebody has a quota to meet or they lose their job. I mean, look, if you're in the way, they could add you to the numbers.
And if you're Ugandan, Ugandans like me, my friend, that accent will let you down. Ugandan will still say clothes instead of clothes. These things end up catching up with you. And do you think Africans are specifically being targeted, do you think? Are there bigger fish to fry?
It's more people, these gang members, terrorists, And many Africans, when they come into the US, they don't tend to have too many crazy criminal records, even though they do. Africans have a lot of fraud, cybersecurity fraud, domestic violence where they are beating their wives, fake documents. Those are the kinds of criminal issues that they tend to have. And so they are also a target. But for now, we're seeing the numbers show that they are focusing more on these Mexicans, Venezuelans, and the people from the Hispanic communities that have the criminal records.
A massive thank you to